24 hours. That's all it took for Nazi Germany's master of propaganda to orchestrate the most chilling finale in the bunker beneath Berlin. While Adolf Hitler's body still smoldered in the Chancellery Garden, Joseph Goebbels wasn't thinking about surrender. He wasn't planning escape. He was preparing murder. His own children, 6 of them, ages 4 to 12. You think you know how evil ends? You don't know the half of it. May 1st, 1945, Soviet shells are landing every 30 seconds. The Reich Chancellery is a tomb, 50 feet below ground. In a concrete maze that reeks of diesel fumes and human waste, the propaganda minister who sold the world on Nazi supremacy is about to commit his final unforgivable act. If you value documented Nazi-era history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Gunther Schwegermann's 1948 testimony to American interrogators in Hanover, and Johannes Henchel's detailed accounts given to Soviet investigators after his capture on May 2nd. These aren't generic sources. These are the men who watched it happen, who heard the shots, who found the bodies. Now back to the information. The bunker complex sprawls beneath Berlin like a concrete cancer. 2 levels, 18 rooms, built in phases, first in 1936, expanded in 1944, 50 feet below ground, below the water table. Diesel pumps run constantly to keep out groundwater. The air stinks of fuel, mold, and fear. Concrete walls weep moisture. The only light comes from naked bulbs that flicker when the generators strain. April 30th, 3:30 p.m. Hitler puts his Walther PPK to his right temple. 1 shot. Eva Braun bites down on cyanide. The Führer is dead, but before Hitler pulled that trigger, he'd spent hours testing cyanide on his dog Blondie. The German Shepherd died instantly. Hitler needed to be certain the poison would work. He'd heard stories about Mussolini's corpse, kicked, spat on, hung upside down in Milan. He wouldn't suffer that humiliation. Within minutes, Schwegermann is carrying the news through the bunker corridors. Otto Günsche and Heinz Linge wrap the bodies in blankets and carry them upstairs. 10 canisters of gasoline. The flames reach 20 feet high in the Chancellery Garden. Soviet artillery lands close enough to shower the cremation with concrete chunks, but they keep pouring fuel until both corpses are consumed. But while others plan breakouts, Goebbels is making different calculations. 4 p.m. Hans Krebs crawls through Soviet lines under a white flag. He's carrying Hitler's political testament and marriage certificate. He meets General Vasily Chuikov of the Soviet 8th Guards Army in a basement in Tempelhof. Chuikov chain-smokes cigarettes while Krebs explains that Hitler is dead, that Admiral Donitz is now head of state, that maybe they can negotiate terms. Stalin's general cuts him off. Unconditional surrender only. No deals, no mercy, no temporary ceasefires. Krebs returns to the bunker at 4 a.m. on May 1st with Moscow's answer. The Reich has hours, maybe less. By this time, the Red Army has advanced to Potsdamer Platz. Less than half a mile from the bunker, Soviet 152nd Rifle Regiment is setting up machine gun nests in the subway tunnels. Tank crews from the 3rd Shock Army are loading high explosive shells for the final assault on the government district. Radio intercepts show German resistance collapsing across the city. Weidling's Berlin defense area has maybe 6,000 effective troops left. Most are old men and teenagers from the Volkssturm. During these same hours, Magda Goebbels is dressing her daughters, 5 girls in long white nightgowns. She brushes 12-year-old Helga's hair with careful strokes. 100 brushes. The same routine they followed at Schwanenwerder Island just weeks ago. 11-year-old Hildegard gets blue ribbons tied in careful bows. 8-year-old Holdine fidgets with her nightgown sleeves. The fabric is scratchy, not like her silk pajamas at home. 7-year-old Hedwig asks why they're getting dressed for bed so early, when the grown-ups are all still awake and talking loudly in the corridors. 4-year-old Haida, sick with tonsillitis, wears a white scarf around her neck that Magda wrapped with motherly care. 9-year-old Helmut, the only boy, complains about his metal braces cutting the inside of his mouth. The orthodontic wire has loosened and keeps jabbing his cheek. These aren't statistics. These are children who had pet cats at their Schwanenwerder Island home just weeks before. Helga collected stamps and could recite French poetry. Her teacher noted she was bright and serious beyond her years. Hildegard drew pictures of horses and wanted to become a veterinarian when she grew up. She had already memorized the names of every dog breed in her father's encyclopedia. Helmut wanted to be a Luftwaffe pilot like his half-brother Harold, who was now a prisoner of war somewhere in North Africa. Hedwig was convinced she'd marry Gunther Schwegermann because his fake eye fascinated her. The glass orb he got after a Russian rifle butt crushed his left socket during the retreat from Moscow. Holdine played piano, simple melodies, but with perfect timing that made her governess proud. Haida still believed in fairy tales and asked her mother every night when Papa would take them back to their real home. The children's father spent his career convincing millions that Jews were subhuman, that Slavs deserved enslavement, that disabled children should be euthanized for the greater good. Now he's planning to apply that same logic to his own family. 7 p.m. Magda makes a phone call to the medical station upstairs. She's looking for Helmut Kuntz. Not a doctor you'd know from history books, just another Nazi functionary who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Born September 26, 1910, in Ettlingen, Baden, son of a middle-class family, studied law first at university, then switched to dentistry. His doctoral thesis examined tooth decay in school children as related to their feeding in infancy, dry academic work that had nothing to do with ideology and everything to do with getting credentials. Kuntz joined the SS in 1936. More for career advancement than fanatical belief. Unit Sturm 10 of the 84th SS Standarte in Weissenfels, just a weekend warrior dentist who drilled teeth and marched in parades. When war broke out, he served with the 3rd SS Totenkopf Division, Death's Head unit that started as concentration camp guards and became a fighting force on the Eastern Front. At Demyansk in 1941, Soviet shrapnel tore through his shoulder and lung. The injury ended his combat service and got him assigned to the Waffen-SS Medical Office in Berlin as junior assistant to the dentist general paperwork and routine cleanings. Nothing that would put him in history books. Until now, 20 minutes later, Kuntz enters the Führerbunker, the upper level where the Goebbels family has been living since April 22nd. Concrete walls 2 feet thick, metal bunk beds bolted to the floor, one room for all 6 children, 3 sets of bunk beds crammed into a space barely 12 feet square. The air circulation system hasn't worked properly in days. It smells like children who haven't bathed regularly in fear sweat from adults who know they're trapped. Magda tells him Hitler is dead, tells him the Soviets will be here by morning. Tells him breakout groups are forming, but most won't make it past the first street corner. She's wearing her best dress, dark blue silk with pearl buttons. Her hair is perfect despite everything. Even facing death, she maintains the image of the ideal Nazi mother. But her hands shake when she lights her cigarette, and her voice cracks when she explains what she needs: morphine. 6 syringes, enough to put 6 children into deep unconsciousness. Kunz would later testify that he tried to refuse. Court records from his 1959 trial in Münster show he claimed Magda threatened him, said if he didn't help, she'd have the SS guards shoot him as a traitor. But witness testimony contradicts this narrative. Rokas Misch, the bunker telephone operator who handled all communications, heard different details from Werner Naumann, Goebbels, state secretary. Naumann told him that Stumpfegger prepared a sweetened Ausspur narcotic drink to sedate the children first, chocolate-flavored morphine syrup that would make them drowsy before the injections. The truth gets muddier when you examine the physical evidence. Soviet forensic teams found morphine in all 6 bodies, but also traces of something else, a barbiturate compound that suggests the children were given multiple sedatives. Maybe Magda wanted to be absolutely certain they wouldn't wake up during what came next. 8:20 p.m. The children are called to their room. They've spent the day playing in the bunker corridors, singing songs for the wounded soldiers in the makeshift hospital upstairs. Helga taught the others a French lullaby she learned from her governess. Helmut performed magic tricks with coins he found in his father's desk. The younger girls played with their dolls, battered toys they carried from Schwanenwerder when the family moved to the bunker. But Helga suspects something. She's the oldest, the brightest, the one who notices when adults whisper and stop talking when children approach. The bunker staff later testified that she'd been crying softly for days, refusing to eat her meals. She knew the thunder they heard wasn't rainstorms. It was Soviet 122mm howitzers getting closer every hour. When adults told her the war was almost over and they'd all go home soon, her eyes showed she didn't believe them. Rokas Misch, manning his communications post 30 feet away, remembers Helga asking her mother direct questions that afternoon. When are we leaving the bunker? Why won't you let us go upstairs anymore? Where's Harold? Harold Quandt, her half-brother, had been captured by Allied forces in Italy. The family knew, but hadn't told the children. When Magda tells them they're getting medicine because they'll be staying in the bunker longer, Helga's eyes show pure fear. She backs toward the corner of the room, but there's nowhere to go. The door is blocked by adults who've made their decision. The morphine goes in first. Small needles, pediatric doses calculated by body weight. Helmut jokes when he hears another shell impact nearby, trying to stay brave like the soldiers he admires. "That was a bullseye," he shouts, not knowing they're his last coherent words. Holding asks if the medicine will make her feel better. Her stomach has been upset for days from stress and bad food. Hedwig wants to know if they'll dream while they sleep. Haida just cries. She's 4 and doesn't understand why strangers with needles are hurting her. One by one, they slip into unconsciousness. The morphine takes longer for some than others. Helga fights it the longest, trying to stay awake. Trying to protect her younger siblings, even as her vision blurs and her limbs go numb. The struggle shows in the autopsy, bruises across her face, defensive wounds on her arms, possibly a broken jaw from where someone held her down. She knew what was happening and tried to fight. 8:40 p.m. And when the morphine has done its work, when 6 small bodies lie still in their bunks breathing shallowly, Magda and Stumpfegger move through the room like executioners. Cyanide ampules, glass capsules the size of pill tablets, filled with hydrogen cyanide, Zyklon B in crystalline form, the same compound used in gas chambers at Auschwitz and Treblinka. Each ampule contains enough poison to kill an adult within 3 to 5 minutes. For children, death comes faster. Stumpfegger, Hitler's personal physician, has done this before. He participated in the Nazi euthanasia program, Action T4, that killed 70,000 disabled patients between 1939 and 1941. He perfected techniques for mass murder disguised as medical treatment. The cyanide ampules are his specialty. Bite down, inhale the gas, respiratory system shuts down, brain death follows. But these aren't anonymous patients in a psychiatric hospital. These are children he's known for months. Haida called him Uncle Ludwig and brought him drawings she made. Helmut asked him endless questions about anatomy and wanted to become a doctor like him. Now he's crushing glass capsules between their unconscious teeth and watching their small bodies convulse as the poison takes effect. Magda assists, holds their heads still, forces their jaws open, makes sure each ampule breaks properly and releases its contents. When Helga's body jerks and her eyes flutter open for a moment, Magda whispers, "Sleep, my darling," and holds her down until the cyanide finishes its work. Soviet forensic teams would find their bodies 3 days later in the exact positions where they died, still in their night clothes with perfect creases from Magda's ironing, ribbons still in the girls' hair, tied with the same precision Magda used when preparing them for birthday parties and Christmas mornings, the classic cherry red coloring of cyanide poisoning on their faces, a chemical reaction that turns hemoglobin bright crimson when oxygen can no longer bind to blood cells. Lieutenant Colonel Ivan Klemenko's men had to force open the door Johannes Henschel begged them to leave closed. When they entered, the smell hit them first. Sweet almonds and decay, the signature scent of hydrogen cyanide mixed with 3 days of decomposition. The children looked peaceful, almost like they were sleeping, except for the unnatural color of their skin and the foam around their mouths. If you value getting the real documented history instead of Hollywood versions, make sure you're subscribed. We dig into the archives that most people never see. The testimonies that never made it into the popular books. Comment below what other final hours from Nazi Germany you want us to investigate. Back to May 1st, 1945, 8:50 p.m., 6 children are dead. Their small bodies growing cold on metal bunks in a concrete tomb beneath the rubble of Berlin. Magda walks to her husband's room in the lower Führerbunker, her hands steady now that the worst is finished. She's accomplished what she set out to do. Her children will never live in a world without National Socialism. They'll never be questioned by Allied investigators. They'll never learn what their father really did during the war. Goebbels has spent the day writing, not surrender letters, not escape plans, a final propaganda statement declaring he would die fighting with his troops in the capital. Even in his final hours, he's lying. He has no intention of fighting on any barricade. He hasn't left the bunker in weeks. The closest he's gotten to combat is listening to artillery fire through the concrete ceiling. His real final day involves dictating amendments to Hitler's political testament, coordinating with Admiral Donitz about the transition of power, and destroying personal papers that might embarrass the Nazi Party's memory. He burns his private diaries, 20 years of detailed entries about party politics, personal vendettas, and family life. The pages that might have explained why he chose murder over mercy for his own children go up in smoke. 9 p.m. Joseph and Magda Goebbels walk up the concrete stairs for the last time. 97 steps from the Führerbunker to ground level. Schwegerman follows them partway, carrying additional ammunition for the cleanup afterward. The stairwell echoes with distant machine gun fire and the rumble of Soviet T-34 tanks moving through the government district. They emerge into the Chancellery Garden through the emergency exit, a steel door hidden behind a fake garden shed, bomb craters everywhere. The landscaping that once showcased Nazi power is now a moonscape of torn earth and shattered concrete. The stench of Hitler and Eva's burned bodies still hangs in the air 4 hours after their cremation. Soviet machine gun fire echoes from Potsdamer Platz, less than half a mile away. Tracer rounds streak overhead every few seconds. This is what the 1,000-year Reich looks like in its final moments. According to Schwegermann's 1948 testimony to American interrogators in Hanover, Joseph and Magda walked ahead of him toward the spot where Hitler's body burned earlier. They stopped about 30 feet from the bunker entrance, near a bomb crater that provided some cover from shrapnel. Schwegermann positioned himself in the stairwell where he could observe but remain protected. 2 shots, close together, maybe 5 seconds apart. Then silence except for the artillery bombardment that never stopped. When Schwegermann climbed the remaining stairs and looked into the garden, both were dead. Joseph had shot Magda in the right temple, then placed his Luger pistol against his own head and pulled the trigger. Or they bit cyanide capsules and received a coup de grace. Witness accounts vary depending on who's telling the story and when. What doesn't vary is Schwegermann's next action. Following Goebbels' final order, he signals to an SS soldier waiting in the stairwell. The man, his name lost to history, emerges with a submachine gun and pumps additional bullets into both corpses. 6 rounds into Goebbels' torso, 4 into Magda's chest. Insurance shots to ensure death and prevent any chance of Soviet capture and interrogation. 9:15 p.m. 10 canisters of gasoline are poured over the bodies. A makeshift torch ignites the fuel. The flames rise, but unlike Hitler's cremation earlier, these bodies burn incompletely. The gasoline runs out. Soviet artillery makes it too dangerous to stay above ground for proper disposal. By midnight, the breakout groups are forming. Führerbunker has divided the remaining bunker personnel into 10 escape teams. They'll try to fight through Soviet encirclement to reach Allied lines in the west or German forces to the north. Most will be killed or captured within hours. Johannes Henschel stays behind. The field hospital above needs power and water, and someone has to run the generators. At 9 a.m. on May 2nd, he surrenders to the Red Army as they storm the bunker complex. He becomes their guide through the underground maze. The first thing Soviet troops want to see is Hitler's room. Then they ask about the women's quarters. They find Eva Braun's wardrobe and spend time examining her dresses and shoes. When they move toward the Goebbels family quarters, Henschel makes one final request. Don't open that door. They open it anyway. May 3rd, Soviet investigators photograph everything. 6 small bodies arranged in their bunks. The girls, hair still neat, helmets, braces visible when they examine his mouth. The autopsy reports will show cause of death as hydrogen cyanide poisoning, but they'll also show evidence of morphine in their systems and, in Helga's case, signs of struggle. The bodies are moved to a temporary morgue in Buch, then transferred to Magdeburg in 1946, where Soviet Smersh maintains a secret facility. For 24 years, the remains of the Goebbels family lie buried in unmarked graves alongside other Nazi officials. 1970, KGB Director Yuri Andropov orders the destruction of all Nazi remains at the Magdeburg facility. The site is being transferred to East German control, and Moscow fears it could become a shrine for neo-Nazi movements. On April 4th, Soviet agents exhume the wooden boxes, burn the contents, crush the bones, and scatter the ashes into the Biederitz River, a tributary of the Elbe. But here's what makes those final 24 hours even more chilling. Goebbels had choices. Albert Speer offered to take the children with him when he fled north. The offer was refused. Karl Gebhardt, head of the German Red Cross, wanted to evacuate them from Berlin. Denied. Other bunker residents suggested hiding them with sympathetic families. Impossible, Magda said. The truth is simpler and more horrifying. Joseph and Magda Goebbels couldn't conceive of their children living in a world without Adolf Hitler. They couldn't imagine them being raised by others, possibly as symbols of resistance to Nazi ideology. Better dead than red, better murdered than saved. 3 weeks earlier, Magda had confessed to her former sister-in-law, "We have demanded monstrous things from the German people and treated other nations with pitiless cruelty. For this, the victors will exact their full revenge. We can't let them think we are cowards. Everybody else has the right to live. We haven't got this right. We have forfeited it." The children had forfeited nothing. Helga collected butterflies and could speak French. Hildegard wanted to be a veterinarian. Helmut wrote poetry. Holding played piano. Hedwig drew pictures of angels. Heide still believed in fairy tales. Joseph Goebbels served exactly 1 day as Chancellor of Germany, Hitler's designated successor according to his will. From 8 p.m. on April 30th until 8 p.m. on May 1st, 1945. His first and only act as head of state was murdering his own children. Before his death, Goebbels made one final statement: "We shall go down in history as the greatest statesmen of all time, or as the greatest criminals." Helmut Kuntz returned to dental practice after 10 years in Soviet captivity. The German courts refused to convict him in 1959, accepting his claim that he only administered morphine. He lived quietly in Freudenstadt until 1976, highly regarded in his profession. Gunther Schwegermann escaped Berlin and lived incognito in Munich until captured by American forces in June 1945, released in April 1947. See Nasen. He later founded an import-export company that became a front operation for the German Federal Intelligence Service. Johannes Henschel spent 4 years in Soviet prison camps. Released in 1949, he moved to Aachen in West Germany and died in 1982. He never spoke publicly about what he witnessed in the bunker, but in private, he called the murder of the Goebbels children the most dreadful thing he saw during the war. In 1988, during construction work in Berlin, excavation crews uncovered sections of the old bunker complex. When they drained the Führerbunker after 43 years underwater, they found broken bed frames from the children's room still lying in the mud, empty wine bottles on the kitchen floor, the stairs leading down to the Führerbunker, where the final decisions were made. The site is now a parking lot. No memorial marks the location where 6 children died for their parents' ideology. But in the Biederitz River, somewhere in the flowing water that feeds the Elbe, traces of their ashes still move toward the sea. The final victims of Nazi Germany weren't soldiers or resistance fighters. They were children whose names all began with H, murdered in the name of loyalty to a dead dictator. Cold, dark, gone.